Hello everyone, Matt from Model Minutes here and welcome back to the workbench for another unboxing. This week it is a look at the Supermarine Spitfire Mk.1a in 1/72 scale from Airfix. So join me on the workbench as I take a look at what's inside the box. So it dawned on me the other day that I have built loads of these particular Supermarine Spitfires, but I've never actually done an unboxing on them. So that ends today and we're going to get inside the box and actually look at this very popular kit. So starting off on the front, you can see that I've got the gift set version, which was available in discount supermarkets here in the UK between November and December of 2022. We've got a very attractive image of the Spitfire in flight, and then over here on the left we've got the paint scheme image that would be included in the kit, and up here we've got an item code of A68206. On the right it tells us that we've got paints included, some poly cement and a brush. Flipping over to the back, we've got our painting and decal placement instructions. These are printed in colour, which is great to see because it makes it so much easier to paint the model, and it tells us that the particular aircraft here is from 610 Squadron at RAF Biggin Hill in July 1940, so it's a Battle of Britain aircraft, I'm pretty sure. On the right here we've got some contact information. It tells us that it was made in the UK and India, so it's a bit of a mix and match of different countries there. On the long edge here we've got some information about the actual Spitfire, the paint scheme again, and we've got skill level 1 flying hour, cut that out and keep it because you can redeem that against kits in the Airfix Club, and the Cartograph logo, which means the decals are going to be made by Cartograph, which is really good because they make some of the best in the world. It does say here that obviously because we only get 4 paints in the box, it says that extra paints may be required to produce this to a higher specification. Anyways, on the edges of the box here, we've just got the same information as on the front, and then the thin edge has some safety warnings. So let's get the box open and see what we've got. As usual, let's take a look at the instructions first, and these are typical of the kinds that come inside of the gift set. Information about the actual aircraft in multiple languages, and then warnings and some tips on the bottom of the front page. Flip over, we've got a key, bottom left, more information in various languages, and then flipping over we get into our assembly instructions. So we start off by painting the pilot, and he's going to be all brown because that's all we've got in the paint selection from the kit. We assemble the various cockpit parts, complete the propeller assembly, install the cockpit inside of the aircraft along with the propeller. If you want it to turn, don't glue it in, just place it in there and it should stay. And then turn over the page. Quite a lot going on this step, but we're basically adding the wings, the engine exhausts, the cockpit canopy, the tail plane. Tells us down here to paint the inside of the wings 33 before you glue them together so that it hides the fact that there's grey plastic in there. And then we can either do landing gear raised or lowered, and we add all of our little details here as well. Come down to the final steps, we add our wheels, air intake and our aerial mast, and at this point here it tells you how the landing gear should look, and that's it. Yep, so 7 steps. It was a skill level 1, and having built this kit previously I can confirm that it is fairly easy to assemble, so shouldn't have any major issues constructing this model. We'll take a quick look at the transfers. So here we go, 1 sheet of transfers. And there's not much to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's only 9 transfers on there. We've got our cockpit control panel, which needs to obviously go on the inside. Everything else goes on the outside. But yeah, if this was your first kit, not too hard to do. This amount of transfers does give you experience in putting them on, but it doesn't become a chore by having too many. So that's pretty cool. Some of the extra stuff that we get are included here. So we've got a paintbrush. That's a number 2. And the Humbrol Airfix paintbrushes tend to be pretty good. I don't tend to have any issues with them. They're actually alright. I use them quite a lot, so that's okay. Paints and glue though, let's have a look inside the packet. And you get, let's have a look, come on. So 1 tube of poly cement. This is the generic tube glue. It's a little bit thick. This seems to be, alright. The last one I looked at was the Jet Provost, and that had already opened itself. You will be able to build the model with this if this is all you have, but personally I'd recommend going out, maybe picking something up like this with a needle applicator, a little bit easier to use, a little bit thinner, not as gloopy, or even Tamiya Extra Thin because it's so much better. But anyway, that should be okay if you haven't got anything else. And then we've got our 4 acrylic paints, and as mentioned in previous reviews, that's got the old pot style. So the old pots are like this, where they've got like a little lip and you open them with the lip, whereas the new pot style don't have the little lip. You've got to get your nail in under the groove. But the new pots have had an issue where they were drying out. So I'm going to just check all of these paints. So the 29 is a dark earth in the old style pot, and if we open it up, it's still liquid, which is good. Obviously they'll need a good mix before you use them, and usually Humbrol acrylics are okay to use. Not necessarily the best paints out there, but they will do the job. So this is the 30 dark green. You can see that it's separated. It was going to need a good mixing up in there. Let's just get the pot open. Let's find the little clippy bit. There we go. So yeah, it's, actually that started to dry out. That paint is a bit dry. It's not as fluid. It's still wet though. If I mix some water into that, I can revive that one. It's not gone completely yet, but it's started to dry out. The next one here is the matte black, number 33. That one's still liquid. Is it? I can't tell. Yes, it is still liquid, yep. And then the 90, which is the type S sky colour, which goes on the bottom of the model, is still liquid. It looks a little bit dry as well. That's going to need a little bit of water in it. So yeah, not the best paints in the world. They do look like they've dried out, a couple of them, a little bit. They're still usable. I can save them, I can revive them, but they're not as good as some other paints that I've seen. So with those parts done, let's take a look at the main bits, which are the sprues. So we get 1, 2, and 3. There we go. That's what we get included in the kit. Not many parts. We've got 2 blue-grey plastic sprues which contain the majority of the parts, and then a clear sprue containing the cockpit, canopy and landing light, which goes on the bottom of the model. So let's take a look at this one first. As is usual with this type of Spitfire, the moulding is pretty crisp. I can't see much in the way of flash or blemishes on the clear part there. And having built a number of these over the years, I don't tend to have any issues with them. They tend to be quite good. So that's a really nice cockpit canopy to look at. The panel lines are quite raised, so they should make painting them quite easy. Moving on to this one, we've got our fuselage halves. The sprues feel greasy. They feel quite greasy, so you're going to want to wash this with some soapy water to remove the mould release agent from when they were being manufactured. Otherwise your paint won't stick too well. But yeah, so we've got our fuselage here and our other small details, propeller, cockpit parts, wheels, turning over. We've got some detail on the inside of the fuselage there, which is nice to see. Some ejector pin marks though, if you can see them there. If you're not too fussed about them like me, just ignore them, but otherwise, you might want to sand and fill them. Flash is minimal and not too bad. The one thing that people tend to moan about this kit are the panel lines being quite chunky and recessed and large. Generally that I don't have an issue with that, because when you come to hand paint this, they get filled in with the paint anyway, so it's alright really. But other people, they do complain that they're a bit large, but on more modern kits, Airfix have addressed that. So looking at the final sprue now, we've got our lower wing surfaces. Again, detail is recessed and raised as appropriate. Again, feels quite greasy. Plastic feels very smooth as well. But generally the flash on here is quite minimal. And compared to the Jet Provost I looked at last time, I seem to have all of the parts actually moulded. There's no short shots that I can see. There's a pilot there for you, and he's alright on the whole. So yeah, generally this Airfix Spitfire looks pretty good. So let's recap. What do we get? We get 1, 2 grey plastic sprues and then 1 clear part. We get a beautiful set of cartograph decals which are printed really well and shouldn't have any problems going onto the model. There's not enough there to cause you any headaches, but just enough to give you some experience. We get a selection of paints which are not the best and may need a little bit of recovery on my part to get them to work properly. Some Humbrol polycement, which I'm probably not going to use. A number 2 brush, which I will use. An instruction sheet, which is relatively easy to follow. And all of this comes contained inside a rather attractive box. So as I mentioned earlier, these kits have been available periodically in the UK from discount supermarkets. So how much did I pay for this? I paid £6.99. It's not as cheap as it has been, you know, prices going up and all that, but £6.99 for this is pretty good. If this was the normal starter set version, which you're unlikely to find these days because Airfix have actually brought in their own new starter set specific models, but this used to be part of a starter set, you'll probably be able to find that online for around the £10 mark. So getting this for £6.99 is a considerably better deal. On the whole, it has got a lot of features of relatively recent kits, but you're probably thinking to yourself it doesn't look as complicated or as detailed as other kits in the Airfix range. And there's a good reason for that, because this tooling actually dates from 2010, so it's 12 years old now. It's not the best that Airfix can do. Yeah, it's alright, it's pretty good, and it is better than the old Airfix Spitfire that they used to have, but this being 12 years old now, it's quite an old kit in the terms of the new Airfix range. This sort of dates around to the point where Hornby took over the Airfix company, or well, purchased it, and this was probably one of the first kits they looked at redoing. Anyway, since 2010 this has been released like a lot. It is never out of the range as far as I can tell. It's always in the range in some way or another. And I think it is worth noting that this kit has been released as an early Mark 1 version with the 2-bladed propeller, so there are parts out there for that, and also as a Spitfire Mark 5A. The Mark 5A sharing many common traits with the Mark 1. I think in the Mark 5A kit you can actually do a Mark 2. And I have got one of these in the stash which I was going to do a comparison on at some point, so let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in seeing that. It's also been part of Dogfight Doubles and other releases since 2010. So yeah, this is probably the most popular Airfix kit. I would put money on this being the most produced Airfix kit since 2010. If you disagree with me, let me know down in the comments which kit you think is the most popular Airfix kit. But anyways, I think it's probably time to wrap this one up here. This is a staple of the Airfix range. It has relatively good detail. Yeah, it does have a few little issues with it, and you know, the paints that came included, I'm probably going to use something else if I can be bothered. I might not use the decals included. I've built this kit loads of times. Usually they're pretty good for a test bed of different techniques or tools, seeing as they are quite cheap and easy to build. You can build this realistically in like a day. But anyways, let me know down in the comments, was my review fair and do you agree with my assessment? Quick shout out to my channel members and patrons for the extra support they give the channel. A massive thanks to these guys on screen. If you'd like to find out how to get involved, take a look at the links in the description. If you're new here, please sub to the channel, and dropping a like will help more modelers see this video. Finally, the last thing to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you on the workbench again next time.